Namaste, and welcome to a new series on the synthesis of yoga with our beloved Ranga. Today is the first installment, and we look forward to years to come.
Yeah.
Would you like to begin with the publisher's note?
Publisher's note.
Good.
So we'll read the publisher's note and then we'll start. And then briefly I'll talk to you about the plan, how he has divided, and then we'll start reading. As usual, our method will be to read one para, get the gist of what he's saying, then go back to the details.
Wonderful.
Publisher's note. The synthesis of yoga first appeared serially in the monthly review Arya between August 1914 and January 1921. Lasted for 6 years. Each installment was written immediately before its publication. The work was left incomplete when the Arya was discontinued. Sri Aurobindo never attempted to complete the synthesis. He did, however, lightly revise the introduction, thoroughly revise all of part 1, that is the Yoga of Divine Works, and significantly revise several chapters of part 2, the Yoga of Integral Knowledge. More than 30 years elapsed between the first appearance of the synthesis in the Arya and the final stages of its incomplete revision. As a result, there are some differences of terminology between the revised and unrevised portions of his book. In 1948, the chapters making up the Yoga of Divine Works was published as a book by Sri Aurobindo Library, Madras. No other part of the synthesis of yoga appeared in book form during Sri Aurobindo's lifetime. In 1955, an edition comprising the introduction and 4 parts was brought out by the Sri Aurobindo International University Center. The present edition, which has been checked against all manuscripts and printed texts, includes for the first time the author's revisions to the introduction and chapters 15 to 17 of part 2 and an incomplete continuation of part 4 entitled The Supramental Time Consciousness. So, Life Divine he revised thoroughly, but the synthesis is left incomplete. So, when he was asked about it, he said, you read what I've written, that's enough for you. Because he had gone far beyond what he had written. He said that if I have to write it now or revise it, I'll have to rewrite the whole thing. Completely I have to rewrite the whole thing. So what is there is enough for us for the time being.
Now, he also said that this was not a synthesizing of all the other yogas.
Yes. That's right. When he talks of synthesis of yoga, he includes in it the Jnana Yoga, the Bhakti Yoga and the Karma Yoga. Not so much attention paid to the Hatha Yoga because its methods can be more easily achieved and with less labor with psychological methods. So he didn't pay much attention to Hatha Yoga. He has dealt with it, but he has not dealt too much with it. And finally, when the last one they have said 4 parts. The first part is the introduction. The second is the path of knowledge. Then the path of bhakti. Then the path of karma yoga. Karma yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga. And finally the section is integral yoga, where he gives his own, what is the newness about the whole thing. Okay? So, now, you can see in the contents page, the first is the introduction for about 45 pages. The conditions of the synthesis. The whole idea is to synthesize and get to a new type of yoga, which is suitable for modern times. Okay? So there are about 40-45 pages, and it's an introduction. Then part 1, the Yoga of Divine Works. It is Karma Yoga as applied to the integral yoga. Then part 2, in Karma Yoga, in fact, there is almost 300 pages. Okay. Then part 2 is the Yoga of Integral Knowledge, Jnana Yoga. Okay. There also he discusses, and that also is huge. Okay. 28 chapters. Then the third is the Yoga of Divine Love, which is not very big. Okay. It is relatively short. And finally, the Yoga of Self-Perfection, which is his contribution and the speciality of his yoga, the Yoga of Self-Perfection. That also is quite big, light. So nearly a little less than 1,000 pages. So as you said, it will take us years to finish. But we can always make a humble beginning. Then, after the contents page, when you come to what is called the half title page, you have the synthesis of yoga and then a small quote which is very, very often quoted. This is the essence of what Sri Aurobindo says about synthesis. All life is yoga. Don't exclude anything. The earlier idea was that if you want to do yoga, you have to give up your profession, you have to give up your world, you have to give up your family, and then continue to do. Either concentrate or go to the forest and do this and do that, or Hatha Yoga. But Sri Aurobindo is saying, no. Yoga can be done while you are in the full flow of life. You don't need to abandon your family, you don't need to abandon your profession, nothing. Everything can be included. In fact, Mother said something interesting. She said, someone said, what's the difference between yogic life and ordinary mundane life? Mother said, there's no difference. Mundane life can be very much a part of the yogic life. You can apply yoga to everything in the physical world. So, that is Sri Aurobindo's. That's why this small quote, but it's so full, it's pregnant with meaning. All life is yoga. You don't need to exclude anything at all. Then, there's a nice picture of Sri Aurobindo in 1950. Okay. So, most of his pictures are not in 1950, but earlier. But in 1950, you can see what he looked like, what we have seen him from 1945 to 1950. This is how he looked. His skin had become absolutely a golden color. Okay. And he was a fairly average dark person to begin with. But his body got absolutely, not only the body was changed, but even the shape of his face, everything changed.
Could you quote what the experience with Purani when he saw Sri Aurobindo?
Yes.
That would be nice.
So, Puraniji was a yoga enthusiast, but he was more enthusiastic. He was from Gujarat, and he was into a lot of physical activities and all that, and he wanted to liberate his country. So he knew that Sri Aurobindo was involved in the Alipur bomb case for nearly 1 year. So he said, I'll go to Pondicherry and find out from him how to make bombs. I want to get rid of these British. Okay. So he came to Sri Aurobindo and he asked Sri Aurobindo, I've come here, I want to learn from you how to make bombs. Then Sri Aurobindo told him, you don't need to worry about it. He says, I have not been able to sleep. From the last 2 years, I am unable to sleep because this is worrying me so much. I want my country to be free. So how can I rest content? So please tell me how to do that. Then Sri Aurobindo said, there's no need for you to do that. The British will leave of their own accord. 1921. The British will leave of their own accord. They will go away. Okay. So, but he says, how can you say that? How can you say that they will go away by themselves? So he said that, suppose I tell you, I give you the guarantee that they will go. Will you listen to me? He said, if you tell me, I will believe. So then the story goes, Purana himself has recounted in his book. He put his fist on the table like that, looked up out of the window and said, as sure as the rising of tomorrow's sun, India will be free. So dramatically he has written. He put his as sure as the rising of tomorrow's sun, India will be free. And it's interesting and worth mentioning here that they have completely eliminated the revolutionary Bengal aspect of the effort. Completely they have wiped out. Not only that, you must know one thing. It is said that Gandhi gave us the freedom movement without fighting. In fact, in Hindi they say, Bina khatg, bina dhal. Okay, he has given you Kardi Kamal. He has done a miracle by fighting the British. You have given us freedom without a sword and a shield. Why did the British leave? Documents have come out afterwards that it was Subhas Chandra Bose who, with his, he escaped from his house arrest, went to Germany through Russia, and he went and met Hitler. Of course, he was misguided in that, but his love of country was so strong, he didn't care what he had to do, but he would do it. Okay, he went and spoke to Hitler, and then after he spoke to him and said, whatever Indian prisoners, because there were about 1 million Indians in the British army. The British could never have fought without the Indians. They are recognizing that now. Okay, 1 million.
1 million.
Yeah, and so when you capture these Indians, please hand them over to me. I'll make an army, the Indian National Army, INA. Okay, so they agreed, but then from there, the Suez Canal was, because the war was on, so he came via the Cape of Good Hope in a submarine and came all the way to Japan and had the same deal with the Japanese. But this was the only thing which Aurobindo points out, that he was misguided. The Japanese would have been worse than the British. The British at least had some semblance of decency, but not the Japanese. They would have been much worse. And Hitler, of course, would have been a disaster. But he did that. And he built up an army of 20,000 in Singapore. Pictures are there, okay? On the internet they are available. And he started marching. He came through Malaysia. But the jungles of Malaysia and the monsoon knocked him off. But he came right up to the Assam border and they were about to enter Assam. It is this that unnerved the British. Documents are there to prove that. They said, if the Indian army, our Indian army becomes the Indian army, the British army becomes the Indian army, how are we going to deal with them? Better to leave. That is why they left. That is the real reason. That is proved now by documents. Okay. So that's what Aurobindo foresaw, and he said that in 1920. 1920-21. Now, we start reading as I told you, he has arranged in 4 parts. Introduction, and then the Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and then his own Yoga of Integral Perfection. So, the first chapter is Life and Yoga. Are they different, or can Yoga be applied to life? Okay? And the title of the book is The Synthesis of Yoga. So, the Jnana Yoga, the Bhakti Yoga and the Karma Yoga are poles apart in their methods and their aim. Okay? Jnana Yoga wants to achieve the static, immobile self. They want knowledge and reject the physical world. Bhakti Yoga wants devotion and love for the divine. They don't care for knowledge. Karma Yoga wants to practice the offering of all your work to the divine and get a semblance of similarity with the divine nature. This is the 3 paths. But Sri Aurobindo wants knowledge, and he wants love, and he wants also the divine to be manifest in the physical world. So that's why the synthesis. So that's why life and yoga. So before he starts, he will explain to you certain basic principles in universal existence. Okay? So we'll read the first para and then we'll come back to it. It's very complicated, the first para itself. Okay? We'll see that. There are 2 necessities of nature's workings which seem always to intervene in the greater forms of human activity, whether these belong to our ordinary fields of movement, or seek those exceptional spheres and fulfillments which appear to us high and divine. In other words, mundane activity and spiritual activity. Every such form tends towards a harmonized complexity and totality, which again breaks apart into various channels of special effort and tendency, only to unite once more in a larger and more puissant synthesis. This is one law that operates. There is a breaking up and a coming together, breaking up and a coming together. Secondly, development into forms is an imperative rule of effective manifestation. Yet, all truth and practice, too strictly formulated, becomes old and loses much, if not all, of its virtue. It must be constantly renovated by fresh streams of the spirit, revivifying the dead or dying vehicle and changing it if it is to acquire a new life. To be perpetually reborn is a condition of material immortality. That's a very interesting sentence. We'll look at that carefully. To be perpetually reborn is a condition of material immortality. We are in an age full of the throes of travail, when all forms of thought and activity that have in themselves any strong power of utility or any secret virtue of persistence are being subjected to a supreme test and given their opportunity of rebirth. The world today presents the aspect of a huge cauldron of media in which all things are being cast, shredded into pieces, experimented upon, combined and recombined, either to perish and provide the scattered material of new forms, or to emerge rejuvenated and changed for a fresh term of existence. Indian yoga, in its essence, a special action or formulation of certain great powers of nature, itself specialized, divided, and variously formulated, is potentially one of these dynamic elements of the future life of humanity. The child of immemorial ages, preserved by its vitality and truth into our modern times, it is now emerging from the secret schools and ascetic retreats in which it had taken refuge and is seeking its place in the future sum of living human powers and utilities. But it has first to rediscover itself, bring to the surface the profoundest reason of its being in that general truth and that unceasing aim of nature which it represents, and find by virtue of this new self-knowledge and self-appreciation its own recovered and larger synthesis. Reorganizing itself, it will enter more easily and powerfully into the reorganized life of the race, which its processes claim to lead within into the most secret penetralia and upward to the highest altitudes of existence and personality. The language is very complex, and so is the thought. It's not very easy. We'll have a look at it. It's quite complex.
But it seems that in the down from that, we are in an age full of this. Yeah. It could have been written yesterday.
Yes, absolutely. So, what are the two laws that he's talking about? There are two necessities of nature's workings. Nature's workings, the laws of nature in the physical world, okay, which seem always to intervene in the greater forms of human activity, whether these belong to our ordinary fields of movement in ordinary life, or seek those exceptional spheres and fulfillments which appear to us high and divine. These laws are applicable from the bottom to the highest. That's what he's saying. And we will see that it's very interesting. The laws remain the same, but their significance goes on changing. It's a very interesting thing. We'll discuss that. Okay. So, first he's saying, we'll read the two laws and then we'll come back to it. We'll go a little into detail because by itself it's very interesting. He is telling that because he wants to show the reasonability of synthesis. It is something that nature herself is doing. So what I am doing is nothing new. I am going to just do what nature is doing. That's what he is. That's why he wants to give these two laws. Okay? So, every such form, he has talked about nature's workings and greater forms of human activity. So every activity or every form of activity, every such form tends towards a harmonized complexity and totality, which again breaks apart into various channels of special effort and tendency, only to unite once more in a larger and more puissant synthesis. So there is a coming together, there is a breaking up. There is a coming together and a breaking up. And every time it comes together, it becomes more and more complex. This is one law. Okay. Now, I will extend this a little more. And in our Indian philosophy, we have the concept of 5 basic vibrations, which by their combinations or permutations create the whole universe. These 5 vibrations are as follows. He is talking about the first one. There is a coming together, a contraction, and an expansion. There is another one which goes upwards, a movement upwards. So contraction, law 1. Expansion, law 2. Going upwards, lifting up, law 3. Law 4, pulling downwards. And law 5, just plain movement. Gamanam. These 5 vibrations are creating with their combinations everything in the physical world in different proportions. Okay? So here he is talking of the contraction and the expansion.
Indian terms for these 5 vibrations?
Pardon?
What are the Indian terms for these 5 vibrations?
I'd have to check them. But yeah, there are words. Okay, I've forgotten the... So, we'll give examples of this, what he's saying, so that it becomes absolutely living to us. We'll take an example in politics and we'll also take an example in medicine. Okay? How about medicine? Long ago at the time in Europe, okay, there was only one physician. A physician used to look after everything. Just one physician, he will look after everything. Then they realized that won't do at all. A brain has got so much that you need a specialist. The heart is something that you need a specialist for that. The liver is something else. So it started splitting up into disciplines. Okay? So here is one example of how it started this. Now what has happened is, the one who knows about the heart, he knows everything about the heart, lot. But he knows nothing about the brain. He knows nothing about the liver. Okay? So, it's a very interesting thing. Specialization, okay? There's a famous quote of George Bernard Shaw. It's very funny, but it's very interesting. He says, specialization, a specialist is one who knows more and more about less and less until finally he knows everything about nothing. It's interesting the way he puts it. So, a specialist. So now you realize, now the idea of holistic medicine has come in. No, it won't do to that. There has to be, of course, that's why physicians are still there. And they have a general idea of everything a little bit. Okay? The physician is necessary. A heart specialist can do nothing about the brain or about the liver. You even have liver specialists. Okay? So this is one. So now, earlier it was one. Then it broke up into many disciplines. Now again it's coming together. Okay, holistic approach. So this is one example. Even in politics you will see that. Okay, 500, 600 years ago there were no nations. In Europe there were no nations at all. Then nations started forming. Okay, that means a division. England, France, Italy, this, that. Okay, they split up. Then they realized that this is no good. We have to come together. The European Union. Economic, what is it called? Economic Union. No, EU, European Union. So now even they have a parliament. They are all coming together. Okay? So that's another example of this, what Sri Aurobindo is saying. Take another case. Take Russia. It was a huge monolithic structure, but it broke up into so many countries. So this law of what he is saying applies in every field, right from the most ordinary to the highest. Okay? So he is going to do the same. Why is he saying all these things? Because he will do that with yoga also. Jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, karma yoga are all separate. I am going to combine them and make them one. Now we see the reason why he is saying all these things. Right? So this is the first law. Every such form tends to a harmonized complexity and totality, which again breaks apart into various channels of special effort and tendency, only to unite once more in a larger and more puissant synthesis. Secondly, development into forms is an imperative rule of effective manifestation. This one phrase we will take up. Development into forms is an imperative rule of effective manifestation. If you want to manifest something, you have to give it clearly a form. Okay? In Life Divine, we have discussed this many times. Okay? Suppose I am a potter, I have a huge amount of clay. Pots and pans are all inherent in that. But I have to manifest them, they are not manifest. So what do? I take a little bit and give it a form. Now that form is manifested. So, development into forms is an imperative rule of effective manifestation. So, if yoga, which is a vast thing, if it has to give it a form, it has to limit itself. Therefore, Jnana Yoga limits itself only to the mind. The Bhakti Yoga limits itself only to the emotions. The Karma Yoga limits itself to the body and the will. So that's the whole. Hatha Yoga concentrates only on the body. So they're all concentrating and give it clear forms. Now Sri Aurobindo says, I will combine all these forms and get one. Complexity synthesis he is going to do. Okay? Secondly, development into forms is an imperative rule of effective manifestation. Yet, all truth and practice too strictly formulated becomes old and loses much, if not all, of its virtue. It must be constantly renovated by fresh streams of the spirit, revivifying the dead or dying vehicle and changing it, if it is to acquire a new life. So, many times, your principles that you have are very good and they start with great enthusiasm, but slowly, the spirit goes and only the outer form remains. So that outer form which is dying, you have to inject new life into it. Okay? I'll give you one very simple example in yoga itself only. Okay? I decide that I have to go to the samadhi every day. Okay? And I will bow down and pray to Mother at the samadhi. I do that. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. Come the 10th day, my mind strays. While I am bowing down, what is for dinner tonight? Okay? So the spirit is slowly going away. So if you want to revive the real spirit, again get back and inject new life into it. Remember that this is the purpose for which I came here is this. So you have to revive that. Okay? So this principle you can apply in everything. To yogas also. Yoga becomes mechanical, and you have to again put new energy into it. Okay? So that's what he's saying. So we are in an age now, in fact, very interesting sentence he's saying, to be perpetually reborn is a condition of a material immortality. Otherwise, what will happen? What you have built up will slowly die. But if you don't want to die and you want material immortality, you have to be constantly reborn. Can we give some examples perhaps? Okay. I mean, death is the principle in life. Even the largest empires, the largest empire in the world was the British Empire. After 300 years, it died. Okay. So, but the you have to, the idea of unity, empire is coming together. You have to put a new meaning into it and a new spirit into it. So constantly you have to go on remembering what you came for, and that principle you have to go on remembering. So that's what he's saying. Okay, so to be perpetually reborn is a condition of a material immortality. Otherwise, material immortality is impossible. You cannot have material immortality. You can only have material mortality. Then he's saying, we are in an age, he wrote this 100 years ago, 120 years ago almost, full of the throes of travail. Throes, pain, okay? The pangs of, the violent pangs of suffering, throes, of travail, hard work, okay? And when all forms of thought and activity that have in themselves any strong power of utility or any secret virtue of persistence are being subjected to a supreme test and given their opportunity of rebirth. In the physical world also we see that there are so many political systems. Aristocracy, plutocracy, okay, democracy, there are many other different things. Now, democracy is they are trying to revive democracy. Autocracy, there are so many different types of things. So, but democracy also is being tested thoroughly in India, okay. All sorts of strange things are happening, okay, which are, I mean, it is stunning. In one case, it happened, in Bengal it happened, that the chief minister of a state, okay, the chief minister of a state is going in protest against his own government. So in India, the principles of democracy are being tested thoroughly. Every possibility is being explored. You can see that today also. Now the elections are coming up in February. A whole lot of BJP people are going into Samajwadi Party. No principles. In the West, at least, their parties they have certain principles. Okay, we want freedom. We want free enterprise. Others say no, there should be a collective thing. So the Labour Party in Britain, for instance, very clearly, labour is important. The others are saying no, the capitalistic tendency is more important. In India, no such. No principles at all, just power. If I can get power here, very good. If I can't get here, I go there. So, democracy is being tried out. That's what Swami is saying. Full of the throes of travail, when all forms of thought and activity that have in themselves any strong power of utility or any secret virtue of persistence are being subjected to a supreme test and given their opportunity of rebirth. You can apply this to Indian democracy.
When he speaks about this cauldron of Medea.
Yes, exactly. We come to that now. Okay. So, the world today presents the aspect of a huge cauldron of Medea. Medea was a mythological character in the Greek mythology, and she has a cauldron, and she has the power to revive dead things. Okay. And she takes limbs and all that and puts and then revives things. So, in other words, what Srindu is saying is that every idea that is there is being thoroughly dissected and given its value and either rejected or is being revived. Okay. That's exactly what he's saying. It's a symbol of what's happening in the physical world today. The throes of travail, and every idea is being given its due. Explore it. In fact, that's what's happening now. What is happening in Afghanistan? Okay. It's being given its chance. Let's see what happens. In China, same thing. It's being tried out. Okay. So this is what is being done. So the supreme test, and given the world today presents the aspect of a huge cauldron of media, in which cauldron, it's a huge iron pot into which you can put all sorts of things and do cooking on a large scale. So there is a cauldron of media in which all things are being cast, shredded into pieces, experimented upon, combined and recombined, either to perish and provide the scattered material of new forms, or to emerge rejuvenated and changed for a fresh term of existence. Now he will apply this principle to Indian yoga. Indian yoga, in its essence, a special action or formulation of certain great powers of nature. Which are the certain great powers of nature? Basically three. Nature is matter, life, mind. And they are all powers. We don't realize that they are powers. Now science has discovered that matter is power. Okay? The occultist has realized that life is power, prana. I can do a huge amount of things with it. Mind power, thought also is a huge power. Okay? I can create computers, I can create mobiles with my mind. So these are great powers of nature. So yoga is discovering that. That's what he's saying. Indian yoga, in essence, is a special action of formulation of certain great powers of nature, basically matter, life and mind, itself specialized, divided and variously formulated. The formulation is actually, the essential yogas are 4. But there are any number of smaller yogas, okay? We should not make a mistake. Any number of yogas in India. All sorts of forms. But basically, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga and Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga is almost dying out now because in modern times you can hardly have the time to do that. You have to earn your living. You can't go on doing that in your...
And where does Raja Yoga fit in?
Raja Yoga is the Jnana Yoga in great detail and very thoroughly done. That is Patanjali. He discovered that highly scientific, very, very systematic. In sequence you go and purify your body, mind, life, and then go on to, if you follow that strictly, there is no danger in yoga. But if you don't follow that strictly, yoga is very dangerous. You can fall. If you try to climb a tree without the skill, you'll break your legs. Okay? Or if you climb a staircase which is not properly built, you will collapse. So, Raj Yoga teaches you how to build a proper staircase. First, concentrate on the body. First, have moral development, then body, then the vital, then you come to the mind. So, the 8 steps in Raj Yoga are Yama, Niyama, Asanas. Asanas concentrates on the body. You build a strong body. Then you come to Pranayama. Breathing exercises which help you to control the vital. Very regular breathing controls the vital. Then you come to the mind and make your mind silent. Teach how to make the mind silent. So very systematic, very scientific. Okay? So there are other yogas also. Tantra, for instance, also is highly scientific and it explores another region altogether. But that will come later on. We'll see what there is to say about it. Okay? So the Indian yoga in its essence, a special action or formulation of certain great powers of nature, itself specialized, divided and variously formulated, is potentially one of those dynamic elements of the future life of humanity. Yoga is likely to play a big part in human life, and that's already come. The United Nations has declared a Yoga Day, International Yoga Day. So the whole world is now aware that there is something called yoga. Okay, so it's already started. The child of immemorial ages, you can't even remember when it started, yoga. Preserved by its vitality and truth into our modern times, it is now emerging from the secret schools and ascetic retreats in which it had taken refuge and is seeking its place in the future sum of living human powers and utilities. It is being more and more recognized, and it is being recognized as a very necessary human activity. It is becoming more and more common now. If you want to be free of disease and be free of anxiety and all sorts of blood pressures and tensions, sit for half an hour every day, calm yourself. It makes a huge difference.
Could you explain why it had taken refuge?
Okay. Because in the earlier times, yoga is a power. And if you give this power to those who are uninitiated, then it can be misused and the misuser himself will suffer. That's why even in Greece and in India, yoga was kept a secret. A power is not to be given to one who is not fit for it. That's why in our Indian system we have what is called adhikara. You must have the right to an activity. You can't make an engineer someone who has not gone through an engineering course. So you can't give yoga to someone who is not prepared for yoga. So that's why the adhikara. So it was kept secret. And it was being taught in, as he's saying, ascetic retreats. Because in ancient days in India, in the Vedic period, even education was given by the rishis. Okay? And it was very, very secret. They would not openly discuss it. But now it is very widespread. There are yogic schools all over. It is going all over the world. Everybody is recognizing that's something that you need to do. Okay, so that's why secret schools and ascetic retreats into which has taken refuge and is seeking its place in the future sum of human living powers and utilities. But before it can do that, Srimad is saying, but it has first to rediscover itself, bring to the surface the profoundest reason for its being in the general truth and that unceasing aim of nature which it represents. Yoga represents the unceasing aim of nature. So, give me one word for unceasing aim of nature. 4 words he has used. What is that?
Evolution.
Evolution. So, this is very interesting also that when Srimad, why is he not saying evolution, but he's saying unceasing aim of nature, because he is supplying you extra information. You will see this all the time, and we will see that. 5 words, 6 words he uses instead of using 1 word, because he is giving you extra information, giving you the characteristics of evolution. Here he is implying that evolution will never cease, number 1. That it has an aim and it is lodged in nature. So all these ideas he is giving you with these 4 words. Okay. So now you know the nature of evolution. That's why he does that. Which it represents, and find by virtue of this new self-knowledge and self-appreciation, okay, its own recovered and larger synthesis. Yoga itself must appreciate its own importance. Earlier it was not, it was only secret. But now it has to be, yes, it is valid for everybody. Okay? So it has to appreciate itself, find out its own importance, and maybe give that knowledge to those who are ready. So, reorganizing itself, that's what Srimad is doing. He is going to reorganize the yoga. Why he does that? We will discuss that. It will enter more easily and powerfully into the reorganized life of the race, which its processes claim to lead within to its most secret penetralia and upward to the highest heights of existence and personality. So, yoga claiming to lead you within to the most secret penetralia. Penetralia, deep inside you, the secrets that are there. So, yoga can be done in 2 ways. Either go inwards or go upwards. If you go upwards, you are going outside the cosmos and you are going outside your body and you get peace, calm, knowledge, etc. Power and all that can come afterwards. If you go inside, horizontally into yourself, Srimad is using the word within or upward. Within, you can touch your psychic being, and that will give you devotion and love for the Lord. And upward, if you go, you will get knowledge, you will get power, you will get ananda. But here, if you go, you will get devotion for the Lord and ananda. May not get much power, but you will get. So there are 2 ways of doing it. That's what he's pointing out. But why has it to reorganize itself? Because what was there, the quality of life in the earlier days, it's not like that today. The whole world is one. Today I am here, tomorrow I am in the United States. Look at him. One day in US, one day in India, one day in Delhi. But he wants to do yoga. So how to do? I can't do it in the traditional way. I have to do it in a new way. That's why it has to reorganize itself. And that reorganization can be done wherever you are. That's what he's saying. So, okay, so reorganizing itself, it will enter more easily and powerfully into the reorganized life of the race, which its processes claim to lead within into the most secret penetralia and upward to the highest altitudes of existence and personality. So you can see it's a very large para, but there are so many ideas involved in it, and we have been able to bring out some of the ideas at least. So this is what Chandra is saying. And he has given you the two laws because he wants to make a synthesis. What are the laws that govern synthesis? Manipulation of forms, revitalization of forms. So I will take Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga and give it a new twist and a new life. And what is that? Integral Yoga. In the right view, both of life and of yoga, all life is either consciously or subconsciously a yoga. For we mean by this term a methodized effort towards self-perfection by the expression of the secret potentialities latent in the being, and highest condition of victory in that effort, a union of the human individual with the universal and transcendent existence we see partially expressed in man and in the cosmos. But all life, when we look behind its appearances, is a vast yoga of nature whose attempts in the conscious and the subconscious to realize her perfection in an ever-increasing expression of her yet unrealized potentialities and to unite herself with her own divine reality. In man, her thinker, she for the first time upon this earth devises self-conscious means and willed arrangements of activity by which this great purpose may be more swiftly and puissantly attained. Yoga, as Swami Vivekananda has said, may be regarded as a means of compressing one's evolution into a single life or a few years or even a few months of bodily existence. A given system of yoga, then, can be no more than a selection or a compression into narrower but more energetic forms of intensity of the general methods which are already being used loosely, largely in a leisurely movement with a profuser apparent waste of material and energy, but with a more complete combination by the Great Mother in her vast upward labor. It is this view of yoga that can alone form the basis for a sound and rational synthesis of yogic methods. For then, yoga ceases to appear something mystic and abnormal, which has no relation to the ordinary processes of the world energy or the purpose she keeps in view in her two great movements of subjective and objective self-fulfillment. It reveals itself rather as an intense and exceptional use of powers that she has already manifested or is progressively organizing in her less exalted but more general operations.
If you could speak a little bit on how Mother asked nature to collaborate with her.
Yeah.
Because this is a very interesting aspect here.
There was a time when Mother asked nature to collaborate, and in that period, all of us were asked to collect the service flowers that were falling in the ashram. She said, you collect them in a basket and count them and put the number in the basket and send it to me. Okay. So it was an activity which continued for quite long. Nature is, I'll explain why Mother said that. Okay. Because evolution is there in nature. He is saying that yoga is nothing but seeking of perfection by nature. Okay? Evolution is nothing but that. There was dead matter, out of that life has come. It's one step towards perfection. That which was dead is now living. So, that which was living is now able to think and create and produce. So, it's a slow evolution towards perfection. Who is doing that? Nature is doing that. So, nature should cooperate with man now for a faster evolution. So, she is asking for nature's cooperation. Now, is nature something impersonal? Does it make any sense to talk to nature? Can I talk to rain? Can I talk to wind? It's impersonal. Will it ever hear me? The answer is yes, because there is a personality behind all impersonality. This is something that we have to keep in mind. Every impersonal force in the world has got a personality representing it. And these are all personalities are gods which live in the overmind level of consciousness. So, nature also, in fact, Mother Nature, okay, Shakti at the highest level is conscious force. Adi Shakti. It is a living entity. But when she comes down into the physical world, she puts on the appearance of mechanical energy without consciousness. So now, because there is mechanical energy without consciousness, okay, Mother is saying, Mother herself is the Divine Mother, but she is not mechanical energy. She is the Supreme Divine Mother. Sri Aurobindo told that to her. In fact, she says in one place, she says that Sri Aurobindo himself has told me that I am the Supreme. She has told that to several people also. Okay, so she is asking Mother Nature to help in the process of yoga, to make it go faster. And it did go faster because they were able to bring down the next level of evolution. The bringing down of the supermind represents the next step in evolution.
I recall that nature at first was not too interested. She said, I love what I'm doing. It may take 1,000,000 years to evolve the supermind.
Yes.
But Mother said, if you collaborate with me, you will become much more beautiful.
That's right.
Much more powerful.
Yes.
Yes.
Nature has taken millions of years to produce life out of matter. Again, another 1,000,000 years to produce life. In fact, it's becoming faster and faster. And nature now has realized that it's better to go faster. So, that's why. It's an interesting thing that as you go higher and higher, the gap between one stage and the next stage reduces. Even in technology, we see that. Okay, 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G is going on. Every 6 months, there is a new discovery and a new. So it goes faster and faster. In fact, scientists speak of the evolution. If I take it on a scale of 0 to 100, man has appeared only at 99.9. So now it is so much faster. So it has taken all this time for man to appear. But now that man is there, yoga becomes conscious. That's what Sri Aurobindo says. So this para also is quite complicated. We'll look at it carefully next time.
Thank you, Ranga.
Okay.
Namaste, all. Namaste. Namaste.